present some thoughts on the history of our local history as I have experienced it. It has been said that history is that slender thread of what has been remembered, stretched over the vast ocean of what has been forgotten. Consulting the Montgomery Historical Society's The History of a Town, I see that much has been forgotten. I'd like to draw out a few threads of my own, spin a few yarns, if you will. As others contribute to the speaker series, adding some thread and spinning more yarns, overlapping and interweaving our stories, over time we might create a more intricate tapestry rather than a slender thread, instructive to ourselves and to future generations curious as to just what we were up to in this special little town. For reference, that quote came from Milan Kundera, a Czech author who identifies as a Frenchman in his first book, The Joke. Keep that in mind. Start with two propositions. The first is from anthropologist Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. The second is from a bumper sticker. Think globally, act locally. Whether you view these as profound truths or trivial platitudes, hold on to them. It may come in handy a little bit later. Honestly, neither had anything to do with how I ended up in town. I was one of 5 friends, including Jim Abbott, Tom Bussing, Gordon Cross, and Charlie Teskey, a few years out of college, looking for something to do. 4 of us borrowed $10,000 each from the 5th, bought the building known as Gardine Hall in Montgomery Center, which is now occupied by the Blue Bike Cafe. And on January 4th, 1974, we opened Kilgore's Trout Saloon. This may not have been the best investment decision. Times were rough. The oil embargo had big lines at every gas station. The stock market had crashed. The nation was in a recession. Inflation was over 11%, and the unemployment rate wasn't far behind. Locally, Montgomery had been losing population since 1900. And there in a town of 651, there were a dozen other spots to get a drink. 1 for every 50 residents, which is a rate that is very impressive anywhere at any time. But we persevered. We tried to build our business, and anything we made, we put back into the building. By the next year, we had improved the grounds along the river, installed restrooms in the first floor, built a sauna that could fit a football team, and did.
That's right,
Cut out the ceiling, making it look like that real saloon, and we brought the People's Prom to Montgomery. Outside the saloon, we helped organize a softball league in eastern Franklin County, building a ball field up on Route 242, in a field now jointly shared by a horse farm and a dirt bike track. Downtown, we were instrumental in launching the New England Mud Football League, clearing land, plowing up a field, flooding it, right across the river from the Corinthia, which is now the Inn. And we built a pontoon bridge so we could access the site. Tales of our trip to Maine, our bus trip to Maine for the championship game, have entered into legend. But the most fun had to be the casino, where for a week we turned the saloon into a gambling emporium in support of the local fire department. There are some bills from that casino floating around here. As we borrowed from Kurt Vonnegut the naming of the saloon, we also shared his appreciation for the volunteer fire department. Our arrival in town coincided with the first ever fire training under Chief Puffer Lumber. Abbott and I eagerly enlisted. As Vonnegut has argued, the volunteer fire department may be the most essentially useful of all human associations, and the best examples of enthusiastic unselfishness to be found in the land. Gordon identified a loophole in the state law, allowing gambling if the proceeds go to a suitable charity. The fire department qualified. We found gambling equipment in a Knights of Columbus Lodge in Winthrop, Massachusetts, and then the gaming could proceed. During casino week, we quickly learned 2 essential lessons. People love to gamble, and it is almost impossible to lose money at a casino. If I'm not mistaken, for several years from 1975 on, we raised more money for the fire department than the town contributed in taxes, helping to firmly establish the fire department as the backbone of the community. To any and all out there who are young, vigorous, and patriotic, join your local volunteer fire department. It may be one of the best things you ever did, and for you believers, it may just be what gets you into heaven. Moving on, let me set up a scene. It's Friday evening, March 12th, 1976. There's a hum of anticipation in the air. At the saloon, we are prepping for business. It's St. Patrick's Week, though some call it Ontario Week. But it's the one time of the year that rivals Christmas for potential cash flow. We had brought in large inventories of food and drink. Bands were booked for the next 10 nights. I was behind the bar, ready for a big night, when in walks Big Nurse and a couple of goons from the State Department of Health. Everybody out. They ordered us and every bar and establishment in town to cease and desist from serving the public, closing us and the town down. It seems some precious high school students from Brookline, Mass. Returned home ill from a skiing trip. Their attentive parents complained to the state, which checked the quality of our water. The test failed, as it always had for years. The source for the old water system was the river, under a plywood lean-to behind where the public service building now stands. Apparently, it was good enough for the residents of Montgomery Center, but not good enough for our visitors. Business establishments serving the public were shut down. Families were told to carry on. People were furious. Our health officer at the time, Jim Willard, is quoted in the Free Press, "Everybody here is mad, damn mad. The state came here like the Gestapo in the night and was shutting things down, and you can quote me on that," which I just did. Teskey and I immediately went down to Montpelier to rattle some cages. We didn't go to the health department. We didn't plead with the bureaucrats. We went straight to the legislators, the people who might be able to respond to heat. We didn't go to the lobby to play nice. We went there to raise a ruckus. This we could do. We learned how to in school. Gordon, Charlie, and I were in the class of 1971, which the president of Harvard College described as the worst class ever, as we drove him into early retirement. The state installed an emergency chlorinator, which I suppose they could have done years previously. But within a few days, we were able to reopen with restrictions on water use. Can't do dishes or wash glasses, so everything was on plastic or in paper. Ice was imported from out of town. We couldn't wash any produce, so the menu was extremely limited. We served a lot of Reuben sandwiches. We put up signs, don't drink the water, specials on whiskey, Jameson, 25 cents. We then got involved in town politics. Gordon joined the water department, I joined the planning commission, Bussey was elected to Montgomery's energy czar, and Abbott moved to Australia. All this happened before politics became a dirty word, when it might actually solve problems. Things got done using the old method of the pork barrel. You vote for my water system, and I'll vote for your bridge. We attracted the attention of the then very young Patrick Leahy, who was able to earmark another discredited procedure. He was able to earmark hundreds of thousands of dollars for a new water system in Montgomery Center. There were federal and state bureaucrats poking around, but the project was run locally by Gordon Cross and Rita Tatro. Apparently, they did such a good job that not long after the water system was up and running, the town received another unspecified grant of $123,000. We were given the month of February to figure out how to spend it. It was too late to include in the warning for town meeting, and we needed a quick decision, so we convened a meeting in the saloon. No, it was not properly warned, but it was like an assembly you might see in an old Western movie. I'm thinking about Liberty Valance, except that in our case, unlike in the movies, we didn't close the bar for the meeting, we kept the bar open. It was Gordon's idea that carried the day. We'd already purchased land for the water system, so let's use this for a recreation center. Plans were drawn up, the cost estimates were high, so we decided to build it ourselves. Eric Coda and Bill Jones teamed up as Caramel Construction and began doing the site work. By the late summer of 1978, we poured some concrete, ordered thousands of feet in logs, and began putting the building together. On July 4th, 1979, we dedicated the rec center. We had our first parade, the music played, and the fire department served barbecue chicken, all traditions that continue to this day. I've been trying to find a way to concisely summarize our years at the saloon, and I believe I have found one quote that serves this purpose. Unfortunately, many may find this somewhat crude, and I apologize in advance. But the culture has been changing, and this quote now seems fairly innocuous, if not downright presidential. It was uttered by the character Al Swearingen, owner of the Gem Saloon, from the HBO series Deadwood, and I quote, "As a base of operations, you cannot beat a fucking saloon." But all things must pass, and within a few years, our time at the saloon had run its course. The other Trout brothers moved away. I stayed, bought some land, found my bride, and was building our home, which is why I was available when the time came to rebuild the clock tower on this building. As most of you know, the Historical Society was formed to save this building and put it to good use. I think they've been doing one hell of a job. How about a hand for the government? Good, because I'm about to take a couple of swipes. His first action was to dismantle the clock tower before it collapsed and caused real damage. I had not previously been involved with the Historical Society. If I had, I might have suggested that prior to the demolition of the tower, if you're really serious about rebuilding this thing, why not take a couple of pictures, make some sketches, take some measurements? But no, nobody thought about that. They did save one set of the louvered vents and one of the clock faces, which I think Rick Ross still has. And with that, I could start reproducing each one, times 4. I was able to, with these and a 3x5 postcard, that's right, a 3x5 postcard from the early 1900s, I was able to scale up and get some approximate dimensions to what the original tower actually was. And with these, we could proceed with the work. And the work went well. Near the conclusion of the project, I was making the display case that hangs in the back of the building, honoring those who donated to the tower's reconstruction, when I directed one particular rant aimed at Steve Hayes. Now, Steve is a good friend and a neighbor, and for decades had been the heart and soul of the Historical Society. That did not spare him my harangue, which went something like this. So this is how it always comes down. Some big shot with an extra C note in his pocket, $100 he'll never miss, passes it our way, and everybody drops to their knees and kisses his ass. Meanwhile, those poor bastards up in the air risking their lives get paid a few bucks and sent on their way. And this was true. The donors were being recognized and the workers were not. And the work was dangerous. There were no fall restraints. There were no hard hats. We were working without a net. We were also working without insurance. All the workers were considered independent contractors. If you got hurt, you were on your own. But if you look, you'll see there is a smaller display case in the back giving proper attribution to those who erected this tower. On the subject of attribution, I do have 2 direct quotations in the Montgomery history book. The first comes from a letter to the Planning Commission, and its content is not important today. The second is quoted without attribution and edited in a way to really garble its meaning. It is the inscription on the memorial pavilion, and it reads in full, "Dedicated to these departed, whose humor and enthusiasm inspires and sustains the spirit of Montgomery." Not only did I write those words, I inscribed them into the building. History book also records that the pavilion was an all-volunteer effort, which is not untrue, but it is deceptively incomplete. The pavilion was my baby. It was conceived the night following Tommy Patch's memorial service. It was nurtured through the supplication of donations, materials, and labor, and it was delivered in the 9th month, as promised, on the 4th of July, 2006. The history book also lists various organizations and associations that have contributed so much to the vibrant nature of our town. These range from business associations to youth groups, from garden clubs to the quilting societies, quilting circles. They are various and numerous and all contribute to an energetic civil society remarkable for such a small community. Some have lasted, but most petered out in a few years. Nowhere is there any mention of my other baby, the Irish American Club. Originally organized as an anarcho-syndicalist commune at Harvard, but currently operating as a 501c7 nonprofit. While contributing much to the town through the years, its chief role has been to produce the yearly People's Prom, the preeminent party in town, which officially kicks off the summer. I know people who have bought land, built homes, and moved to town because of the prom. We recently produced the 46th annual People's Prom, at which could be heard the chant, 4 more proms, 4 more proms, which will bring us to 50 and retirement. I know of no other organization or event in town that can claim such longevity, or hilarity, or frivolity. Last month, at the 40th anniversary of the Rec Center, I had the unique opportunity to offer a toast. Disregarding the cliched tropes common to the 4th of July, freedom, duty, liberty, and such, the good people of Montgomery raised their glasses in support of that which we have uniquely among the peoples of the earth taken as our benchmarks. We drank to humor and enthusiasm. And so, in summary and conclusion, ask not what Montgomery can do for you, ask what you can do for Montgomery.
Tim, what was the Montgomery connection? Why here?
The building. I saw the building. We had a business broker in Burlington, and he was going through this loose leaf folder, and he just showed a picture of it, and I said, "You don't want this," and he turned it over. No, turn that. And I liked the look of the building, so we came up and took a look, and I loved the building and the sound, and let's do it. I said, this could be a saloon. Ask me about the borough. The borough. Now, the borough, for the first several years of the Rec Center, this big borough, and the history book says it was generously donated by a Jersey Drown, which again is technically true. What was happening, it must have been a weekend, and the building was pretty much built, and I was working on the roof system, which is a hip roof, which isn't standard, and back then, carpenters could rip those out pretty quickly, but I think that might have been my first hip roof. And there's all these people around, and I didn't want anybody to bother me, so why don't we go get that burrow? And we discovered that a week or so earlier. I think busing was leading us. We went looking for lost pond, and we figured the best way to find lost pond was to get lost. But instead of getting lost, we found this burrow. So we sent the code and the rest of the guys up to get the burrow, and it was so heavy that when they came back in, a couple hours later, as it was Bruce McNull and Kenny Coda were on the hood of Coda's record. And I think they picked up a couple hitchhikers just to try to balance it so they could so the burrow wouldn't be dragging the whole way. Once we had it on site, possession is 90%, Jersey had really little choice. I mean, and within 5 or 10 years, it was rotted into the earth. And it was worth thousands of dollars as veneer or as furniture. And it's somewhat unfortunate, but it's in our history.
Kids had a wonderful time. The kids had a wonderful time.
It was a lot of fun, yeah. The other thing I might want to mention is the Spalding Gray kerfuffle, which I think we published a little earlier, but he did show up. He sort of showed up, advertised as this itinerant philosopher, which you know, if you've been to college and taken philosophy, it always sounds good. He was going to be here for a few days and observe and give his take. Well, it was in this building. It must have been the Sunday night after the prom. And he was giving his take, but it really wasn't his take on the town. It was just sort of reciting, you know, his normal talking points. You know, I'm hitchhiking across New England, and I'm screwing that girl and everything like that. And there's these three elderly ladies sitting right in front of him who were just shocked. So yeah, some of us got a little upset. And at one point, after I came up, started talking to him, and I said, "Well, close the doors." Well, it was Jim McMurray who got up to go to the back to close the doors. Now, if you don't remember Jim, he's sort of like the genie from Aladdin, except, you know, whiter and more hair, or Mr. Clean, and a lot bigger. And you know, although he was a pussycat, he could look very intimidating. And it was right about then that I saw the drop of sweat fall from Spalding Gray's nose. But it was at another time when I was the guy at the doors. And it was a wedding, a very fancy wedding. And I was just here because Sam was the Justice of the Peace, and I was their +1. But it was a very windy, sunny day, and the doors would keep on blowing open. So I just went to the back and stood in front of the doors so they wouldn't blow open. And there on the stage, when it got to the critical point, you know, she just got up and said, "Sorry, Glenn, I just can't go through with this." Jumped off the stage, ran right down the aisle. I stepped aside, the doors blew open. A ray of sunshine came in at the speed of light, and she went out almost as fast. And meanwhile, you know, the poor groom, you know, he went out that way where there's another exit and a staircase, and my poor bride was standing here with the most, you know, befuddled look on her face. Went next door and they had all the seafood and kegs of beer, so I tapped a keg of beer. They kept on, you know, trying to plead with her to come back, which she wasn't going to do. And then I realized I do have a bucket list. I never thought I did. Well, I've been to the Grand Canyon, I've seen the Eiffel Tower, and now I've seen a girl leave the room at the altar. I never thought I wanted to. I had heard about it, I'd seen it in The Graduate, but I had never, and now I had a check mark. As for the Irish American Club, the other things that they may have done, well, for years we had a fall ball. We would sponsor a dance in the fall. I think there were two different, at the Grange, I think we had two different film series at the Grange. And at one point, it had to be again around the early to mid 80s, when the Grange as an organization was folding. Everybody was dying out and there were no people left, and they were donating the building to the town. But it hadn't quite happened yet. You know, so we took advantage of that vacuum and just organized a little work party, got some rolling staging, and we took that. Well, at that point, the Grange had a suspended ceiling, like the 2x4 grids like you might see in any office building. It was sort of right around the top of the windows, but the mezzanine was completely cut off. I didn't even know it was there. So we went in and took out the ceiling. I don't recall asking anybody permission. We may have informed Billy Kavanaugh, who was both in the Grange and a selectman. But you know, once we took out that ceiling, you could see that tin ceiling so much higher, and it made such a better building. Yeah. Any questions? If not, to humor and enthusiasm.
Back here.
How did a good Harvard boy become such a good carpenter?
All of my relatives on my mother's side were carpenters in Chicago. You know, my great-grandfather came from Switzerland, and I think he had 4 sons, the Jutzi brothers, or as Liz would call them, Jutzi. But once they hit Chicago, they were the Jutzis. And they all had daughters. And I apparently was born with the Jutzi gene, unlike, you know, my brother. or my cousins, you know. I think it was sort of unique to me, and I loved it as a kid. I found a hammer when I was 4 years old. My grandfather put a handle on it, and it's the same hammer I have today. It's you know, it's probably 20 different handles and 6 different heads, but the people in historical renovation know that it's still the same hammer. But I just loved it, took to it, was quick at it, and I enjoyed it. I mean, obviously becoming a carpenter may not have been the best decision. Nobody that I knew, you know, recommended that I follow a lifetime in the blue-collar trades. But, you know, can't change it now. It's been a very satisfying work career. I think I've built about half the homes for the members of the Historical Society, which may have something to do with why I got this award. I don't know. Well, I'll do it again. To humor and enthusiasm.
Montgomery baseball cap. It's a coveted item, and hopefully you'll also motivate those in the audience to think about coming up here and doing the same kind of thing. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes, and definitely, anybody with old stories to tell, talk to Scott, and I'd like to see this happen more often. And again, the more stories we can bring together and interweave, I think we can get a better idea. You know, if anybody in the future is curious of how strange this town was, they can check it out.
The Historical Society is very grateful for Tim for doing this. It's not because he built anybody's house. It's because whenever we've needed something, he's been very generous with us and kept us on the straight and narrow. I remind everybody that the society is only as good as its members. It's only as good as its board that works very hard for no payback. And I wanted to kick this off with Tim because I've heard him talk before about how it's easy to forget that the time just didn't start with you, the individual. We all stand on somebody else's shoulders, whether it's our parents, other relatives, the community at large, and the people that came before us. And so in our small way, it was an attempt to try to give voice to that thought and to get to an area that may not always come through, not for any mean reason or anything like that, but just because we're all human as well. So with that, we call the evening to a question. I think Tim's going to stick around a little bit if anybody wants to come up and tell some other stories that they might not have wanted recorded. I will go shut the camera off and you can feel free to talk. The camera wasn't in the audience or anything like that. We have no facial recognition software or anything like that. We'll kill the camera. And thank you all for coming. If you've got ideas about who you'd like to see up here in Tim's spot, or what kind of stories you'd like to do, please let us know. You can do it through our email on our website. I'm hoping to co-opt Tim into maybe a co-chairing group and arranging for future shows as well. If you've got some ideas, please let us know, because we're always interested in trying to document it and to share that knowledge that comes from the folks that have been around a little while. Thank you all.
Thank you, Scott.